Lesson 3.3, Types of Statistical Study. Our objective for this lesson is to be able to determine whether a study is observational or an experiment, and if it's an experiment, to be able to identify the control group and the treatment group. All right, first let's define an observational study. An observational study is a study in which researchers observe or measure characteristics of the sample members, but do not attempt to influence or modify those characteristics. So we're not trying to manipulate anything. We're just observing what is happening or what has happened in the past. We're not inserting ourselves into this situation. We are just watching. On the other hand, an experiment is a study in which researchers apply a treatment to some or all of the sample members and then observe the effects of the treatment. So we're an observational study. We were just watching what is going to happen whether we're there or not. An experiment, we're actually trying to manipulate what happens. We're introducing some treatment, which could be a medicine or some therapy or something else. We're trying to change things with this treatment and observing then whether or not that had any effect. In an experiment, we usually will divide the sample into two groups, a treatment group and a control group. So the treatment group is the group of sample members in an experiment who receive the treatment being tested. So remember, we're trying to make an observation or make an inference about a population. And so we chose a sample from that population. And now we're taking our sample and we're splitting it into two different groups. One group that will receive the treatment and one group that will not. So the group that doesn't receive the treatment is called the control group. So the group of sample members in an experiment who do not receive the treatment being tested is called the control group. And it's going to be very important that we choose our treatment group and control group randomly, and that they are the same in all respects except for the fact that the treatment group gets the treatment and the control group does not. This is going to be very important so that if we do observe a difference between the treatment group and the control group, we'll know then that that difference was caused by the treatment. All right, our example problems ask us to determine whether each of the following studies described is observational or an experiment. If the study is an experiment, identify the control and treatment groups. So the first study we're told about, example number 1, says a study was conducted to investigate the relationship between video games and happiness. 100 subjects were randomly selected and data on amount of time playing video games per week and a happiness score from 1 to 10, 10 being extremely happy, were obtained. So notice here that we're not having students play video games. We're not bringing in a bunch of students and asking them to play video games. We're just asking them about video games they've already played and asking them to rate their happiness. So we're asking them to tell us how often they play video games or how long they play video games each week, and then rate their happiness. So we're not introducing any treatment. We're not trying to manipulate anything. We're just asking about the behavior. And so this is going to be an observational study. And so that's it. That's all we have to do with this problem, is just identify that this is an observational study. All right, so now our second example says another study was conducted to investigate the relationship between violent video games and aggression. 200 college students were randomly assigned to play either a violent or non-violent video game. A short time later, the students were given an opportunity to punish an opponent by delivering a noise blast with varying intensity. So here, notice that we are introducing something new. We're not just asking these students to describe their video game playing behavior. We're bringing in students and having them play either a non-violent or a violent video game, and then watching how that affects their behavior. So this is an experiment. And so now we need to describe the control group and the treatment group here. So the treatment here, and you might not think of this as a treatment in the traditional sense, but the treatment that is happening here is violent video games. That's what we're trying to determine is the effect of non-violent video games on behavior. And so the treatment that's being applied is the playing of violent video games. So the control group is going to be those who played the non-violent games. And the treatment group is going to be the group of students who played the violent games. So the treatment that we're trying to look at is the playing of violent video games. We're trying to see how that impacts their aggression. And so that's the treatment we're observing. But then we have this control group that notice that it was randomly selected who would be in the control group and who would be in the treatment group. And so we've tried to make the treatment group and the control group be as similar as possible, right down to the fact that they both came in and played video games for a while. And the difference was just that the treatment group was playing violent video games and the control group were playing non-violent video games.